And here we are with Wanda Wright. Welcome, Wanda. Glad to have you here.
Thanks so much, Gene. This is really a great opportunity. Thank you for offering it to me.
It's a great opportunity for me to get to chat with you. You caught my attention, and I knew you would have a story to tell. And I want to give you a chance to start us off, as we start off every guest, with you describing your time on active duty, and then we're going to work into the transition. But what did you do on active duty?
Sure. Well, I'll start off. I graduated from the Air Force Academy in 1985 and was commissioned as second lieutenant. And I was able to get sort of my dream job at Myrtle Beach Air Force Base in South Carolina, 23-year-old at the beach. It was great. I spent 2 years there and going to AIT for budget. I was a budget officer.
Help us with AIT for those that are not in the Air Force.
Yeah, so it's a school. It's your schooling for your skill that you're going to have while you're in. And so I started off as a deputy budget officer and did that for a couple of years. And then I was stationed at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base.
So Wanda, help us out with AIT for those that might not be in the Air Force. We have all services listening to us.
Yeah, so it's just our schooling, right? You know, we all have our names for skills. Ours was AFSC, and I was trained to be a budget officer. And my first assignment out of the Air Force Academy was Myrtle Beach Air Force Base, South Carolina. And while I was there, I became a deputy budget officer after my schooling. And I was there for about 2.5 years. And can you hear that?
I can. There's a break-in. Look outside. I guess it stopped. We're okay.
Okay, sorry. And then I spent another 2.5 years at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base as the budget officer. And I decided at that time that having a family was going to be detrimental to my career. Trying to be in the active duty Air Force and trying to have a fellow military person that I was married to also in was really not very conducive to our family. So I got out at the 5-year point of my active duty time and went into the Arizona National Guard. Yeah, go ahead.
If I could, I'm just thinking back, we're about the same vintage, well, I'll say.
Yes, that's great.
And it seems to me that was a time when we didn't quite have our heads wrapped around how to do dual military families.
Yes, they would tell you about joint spouse assignments, right? But I think they were far and few between, and it was difficult to try to get stationed together. And so after I got married, we both were able to get to Arizona and get to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, but it was not very easy. And I felt my husband at the time was a pilot, and I felt it was going to be difficult in the future to try to stay together. So I got out and I joined the Arizona National Guard, and I was a part-time guardsman for a number of years. And I worked for Hughes Missile Systems as my full-time job, which is now Raytheon. And
did the guard recruit you, or how did you know you wanted to affiliate like that?
It's interesting. They did recruit me because they had someone who was interested in Palace Chase that was in the Guard. And when I just mentioned to a recruiter, hey, I'm kind of interested in moving over to the Guard out of active duty, he's like, I got the deal for you. There was a gentleman who was in finance who wanted to go active duty. I was active duty and wanted to come to the Guard, and we switched spots.
So help me with Palace Chase.
Yes, it's a system that allows you to sort of jump from active duty into a Guard or reserve situation. And really, it's just paperwork, right? I come off of he in fact came out of the National Guard, went on Title 10, and I left Title 10 and went to Title 32, which is State Guard. And it worked great. I he went off to be an active duty person, and I came back, and I was able to stay in Arizona and be a guardsman on the weekends and a couple of weeks a year, and work for Hughes Missile Systems. And then around 3 or 4 years in, the Guard asked me to come back full time. The Tucson Guard is an international F-16 training site. And they needed a budget officer to manage all the state contracts with all these countries. And so I said, yes, that sounds very challenging. I will come back and be full-time in the National Guard. And then I was full-time from that point on for another like 19 years until I was.
I'm sorry, as a Navy person, I want to just help the audience more fully understand just some of these idiosyncrasies here, that people that do Guard and Reserve duty, they are fluent in what these terms mean.
Yeah.
Title 10 is federal level
Federal
national,
active duty.
Yeah. And
Right.
32 is state level.
State level.
And Palace Chase is an Air Force
Yes.
part of the Air Force
program.
lexicon.
Yes, the Air Force program.
And so that's not a nickname. That's the actual, that's what it's called.
That is the actual name, Palace.
Okay. I'm thinking of Paper Chase when you said it was really just a bunch of paperwork here. Okay. I didn't want to give, I didn't mean to distract us there. I just wanted to make sure people are processing what's being said here, because it is a slightly different angle on how to perform service.
Well, and we're all about throwing out acronyms and not really explaining them. So I'll try to do better about that. Yes. So, it was fortuitous for me in that, I wanted to have a family too. And the Guard allowed me to stay in one place, which I thought was really a wonderful aspect of it. The other thing about the National Guard is you can change AFSCs. So AFSC skills. So I started off as a budget officer, active duty. When I came active duty, when I went into the National Guard, I became an accounting and finance officer.
And was your undergraduate degree in anything related to business or?
Yes, it was finance. I had a management, financial management degree. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and the academies give out degrees like that.
So I'm a political science person, and I have observed that sometimes the degrees do not align to what the career choice turns out to be. So I'm just pulling the thread there to see that the skill sets lined up, and so help us with the distinction between budget officer and accounting and finance.
Yes. So accounting and finance accounts. They account for all the bills that come in that have to be paid by the military. They account for all the payroll that has to be paid out to all of the members, civilian or military. Budget is really strategic planning for the use of the money that the military is going to give you. And so Davis-Monthan Air Force Base had a budget, and I don't even remember how much it was. It was in the millions, obviously. And I was the person to write the budget, submit the budget to higher headquarters, and then once it was approved, sort of manage the budget as it was accounted for by the accountants. And so they were closely related.
And so how long were you able to stay at Davis-Monthan?
I was there for 2.5 years. And then once I started in the Guard, I moved to the 162nd Fighter Wing in Tucson, which is right near the airport in Tucson.
And you served there for how long?
Let's see, 1990 to 2005.
Is there career progression in terms of different jobs in that same geographic location? Is that how it works?
That's how it works. I feel like for promotion, you need to move around. And generally on active duty, right, we kind of stay in the same skill and we move up by rank. I was able to, because you're in the Guard, and it's a little bit different system, to move up by rank, but also by skill. So After I left budget and came to the Guard, I was an accounting and finance officer. I left being an accounting and finance officer and went to be a communications officer. I did that for about 6 years.
And was that just because an opportunity came available and it interested you?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother story. We only have about 20 minutes, but quickly, I'll just summarize. You remember when we went through those inspections every 4 years or so?
Like
The
a command
headquarters would come
inspection?
down, yes, and do their inspection. Well, we had an inspection. Communication officer was fired because of the inspection. And so there was a need to replace that person. And I was like, that sounds like a great thing to do. And I raised my hand. And they said, we think as a leader, you could probably get in there and get things back righted, because if you failed, that means things are wrong. And someone needs to fix those things that were wrong. And so I went in there, and for 6 years, I worked to sort of manifest a better organization and to pass the inspection the next time.
So you rose to complete a career from the Tucson location?
So I left Tucson in 2005. And my final job there was a wing executive officer. And I was promoted to colonel and accepted a job as the director of staff for the Arizona Air National Guard state headquarters. So I had to move as well. I moved from Tucson to Phoenix.
And you were dual military family. Was that continuing?
It was continuing.
The dual careers, that is?
Yes. My husband was actually a traditional guardsman, which means weekends, 2 weeks a year. And so he was able to move as well up to Phoenix. He found another job and moved up to Phoenix as well. And so we were able to manage that.
For those not familiar with the Arizona geography, you said that was 6 hours away?
It's about 90 minutes. So
where did I get 6 hours?
Yes. I
said
6 additional years up in Phoenix. So maybe you caught that. But it's about 90 minutes. So my husband was able to go back to Tucson to do his guard work. And it wasn't such a big inconvenience because it's only 90 miles, really, the difference. And then I was up here at state headquarters. And so 2005 to 2011, I worked in Phoenix, and then I retired in 2011.
So put yourself in 2010. What were you thinking about that signaled to you that it was time to leave, and what were you considering as you looked across the precipice to transition?
Yes. So I had the opportunity to be, and the Guard is a little bit different than the active duty in that if there is a billet for a general officer, you can put someone in and they can get what they call a certificate for promotion to general officer. And I got that certificate, but there was no openings for general officer. And I decided that at that point, I didn't want to, and I don't think they wanted me to sort of just sit there and wait, because I'd already been 06 for 6 years, and I'd been in the position for 6 years. And you don't want to hold people up from things. So I think mutually we just decided it was probably time to retire if I wasn't going to make general officer position, and to kind of figure out what I was going to do next. So you're right. In 2010, I started really thinking about, let's start getting on the bandwagon of trying to figure out what you're going to do when you retire, and start actually applying for positions. And that's a recommendation that they make to you from Human Resources and TAP, the Transitional Assistance Program. And so I did. But think about 2010 and what was happening then. We had the mortgage crisis that started, I think, in 2008. And the high point of that was 2009 and 2010. And we had a huge recession happening. And I was an executive staff officer coming out of the military and a woman veteran. And I don't think anyone knew what to do with me.
Nobody was buying, huh?
No one was buying. I had one interview in a 12-month period.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to that recession. It was in part it was the housing crisis, but it was
Yes.
this slow rolling movement through multiple industries. It actually took a couple of years for that to hit the defense industry the way it hit the rest of the economy. But what a time to make the transition. So what did you do?
Yes. What a time. What a time. What a time. So, it helps to network. And that's one of my messages for this transitioning piece is that when you know people, it helps to know other people. And that helps to find jobs. And I happen to be on a school board for a charter elementary school. And in Arizona, we have public schools and we have charter schools. And they're much like public schools, they're just run a little bit differently. And at being a board member, we had been looking at moving this school to a larger campus. It was on like an acre campus, and we were looking at moving it to a larger campus. Well, they found one, and the campus was about 5 to 6 acres with a lot more buildings and a lot more infrastructure. And when they started school in the new, at this new location, they went from an A school to a C school in 1 year. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. One, it was a Montessori school, and bringing a lot of non-Montessori kids in to a Montessori school kind of changed the dynamics of the Montessori learning and teaching. The second thing is they were not prepared for this complete change in facility and infrastructure that this particular location had. And so, they're looking around like, who can help us? And I didn't have a job. And being a board member and a previous military person, they're like, you can do this kind of stuff. You're an operations kind of person.
They figure it out. Yeah.
Yes. And so I said, sure, I don't have a job. I'll take this for a while. I'll help you guys out. And I started, I think, in July of 2000, or yeah, I'm sorry, the end of August in 2011. And I spent the first year just really cleaning up a lot of things. And I thought, well, I'll stay here a couple of years until this recession economy kind of gets back on its feet. And then I'll start looking for another position. Well, I spent 4 years there, manifesting. Go ahead.
Just to back up a half a step here. Did you spend time without a job? You indicated you had one interview or one offer within a year, but was there time without work where there was uncertainty in the air, or how did that go?
Well, I feel like there was uncertainty as I was getting closer and closer to retirement. Like, what is happening? How come I can't even get interviews? As each day passes and your retirement date's coming up, I started to get a little bit fretful about it. But also at this time, the school thing was starting to unfold. So I didn't really have any time. I think I took a month off. You have that time where you've accumulated and you take it, the transition.
A little bit of decompression.
Yes. And then I started pretty much right away in my new position at the school. But yes, I mean, you feel a thing, you feel a way about that. It's like, I have skills. I made my way up through this system, and I know that I can do pretty much any job anyone would have asked me to do. And yet, when people looked at me across the room, and the one time that I had to interview, I feel like they didn't understand me. Like, things were going through their mind that was maybe distracting for them when they were in consideration for me against others. And so, it was a time of, you wondered about your confidence, you're kind of worried about, will I ever get a job? And all those things kind of roll through your mind while you're trying to transition. And, I really thank the school for allowing me that opportunity to have a job at the time when a lot of people weren't having jobs just because of the economy.
Yeah. I wonder if on the hiring side that some of the uncertainty by the hiring official is fear on their part that they might miscalculate what you're capable of, or that you potentially are a threat to them because you may have more skills than that person hiring. You've certainly seen a lot of things and adapted to a lot of things. One doesn't just ascend to the rank of colonel accidentally. Those that
Right.
have been in understand that. So you spent 4 years at the charter school.
I did.
What's next?
So I'm working, I'm thinking I'm going to be in academics. I get a degree in educational leadership, thinking, well, one day I'll be a principal at a school. And I get a phone call from a good friend of mine who I had known in the National Guard. He was on the Army side, and we worked together a lot to sort of solve problems in a joint fashion. And he called me and said, Wanda, Governor Ducey at the time had just been elected in Arizona, and they are looking for a director for the Department of Veteran Services. And he said, I thought of you immediately. You would be perfect for the job. So I didn't have any transition at that time. I applied. If I didn't get it, I still had a job. Things would be fine. And then things started to roll. Like I got an interview, and I got a second interview, and then I got a third interview. And I thought, well, maybe I have an opportunity to get this job. And in March of 2015, I received a call and an offer. And I was named soon after the director of the Arizona Department of Veteran Services. So that transition was fairly easy.
Did that feel like there was structure to that setting?
Yes, and it also, for me, really built my confidence and back up about who I really am, right? I have the authority, confidence, and skill to be a high-level executive. Being the director also meant I was on the cabinet of the governor. And, there's influence there, right? So it harkens me back to being the director of staff over all of these airmen in the National Guard, that now I'm back at the level I should be. And so I felt very, very good about that.
And was there I know the office reports to the governor, but is there a political feel to it, or is it an apolitical position?
It is an appointed position. And so I had to go before our state legislature, and they had to vote on me. It was unanimous. So that also was a big confidence builder that they saw me, they saw my resume, they saw what I could do, and they voted me in unanimously that she's going to be the right person for this job. And I started.
At the federal level, when people are being appointed or confirmed, sometimes they have to go visit with members of Congress or with senators in advance of that appointment. Did you similarly have to go meet with those who were the deciders to sort of let them get to know you a little better, or was it purely based on your record?
I feel like it was purely based on my record. I did not go visit people prior because it happened very quickly. I was given the offer in March, and by 1 April, I was confirmed. So it was really fast. And,
Yeah.
I think they probably passed around my resume and and they do the investigation on you that make sure you're, a solid citizen, and it all looked good. So I think it was not a problem for anybody. Yeah.
And I know you're not in that position today. Tell us what you do today.
So I am currently in between jobs today, but on 1 June, I started at Arizona State University as the director for the Office of Veteran and Military Academic Engagement.
So sometimes there was a time when if people said they were between jobs, it meant that they didn't have a job or they had just lost a job. And I like how you said it in a way that there was no question where this was going. But congratulations on this assignment. Was this a surprise to you? How did this? Can you say how this came about?
Yeah, I certainly can. So, I had the, I guess, feeling that when I was in my directorship, that my merit and the good works that I had done would allow me to stay between the changes of parties. So our governor did his time, 8 years, and that's the term limit. And we voted in a new governor, and the governor was also a new party. And so all those directors that the previous party had appointed were now on the chopping block. And I think they probably removed about 80% of us to have to go look for additional jobs. So I'll tell you, I think that this transition was even more traumatic than the first transition leaving the military. And, I think all those old feelings come back about, can I find a job? Can I find a job at the right pay? Will they value the skills that I bring to this position when they're interviewing me? Will they see what I am when they're reviewing all of my paperwork? They evaluate all the paperwork and they're evaluating you. And I think too, the interview process has changed so much over these last, I'll say now 12, 15 years since I interviewed the last time, in regards to, there's not just one interview anymore. There's like multiple interviews that you have to go through. I actually had to do a presentation for Arizona State. And I think, just to show that I could actually teach, or that I could stand up in front of people and be able to function. But it was so much more laborious, I guess I'll say, to interview, and even the applications, like even trying to apply for these positions, so much paperwork. I had to create an academic resume, which is a curriculum vitae, if you've ever heard of that, which is like a 20-page kind of resume on including things like presentations you've made and papers you've written and those kinds of things. So it was very much more triggering for me to have to go through all of this in order to find another job. And I am age 60. So that was another worry. Am I too old? Will they evaluate me as being too old? And so those are the things that I was trying to deal with as I proceeded through the application interview process for this particular job. And it was multiple jobs. I did get multiple interviews, so that was helpful. But I think I got
60 is the new 40 though, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't look 60, so
no, and for those that can't see, that is a fact. And I think ageism is something that that has been with us for some time, but through the wonders of science and medicine and knowledge about lifestyle and taking care of ourselves, many people are working by choice much later into life, and this idea of go over the horizon at age 65, I think is a myth we were sold by our parents and grandparents that doesn't fit today.
I agree. I have a lot of working life left in me. And I think for me, this particular job was the one I really wanted. It was the best fit for me. I had got a degree in educational leadership. I have a degree in public administration, and I have a master's degree in business. And so those three sort of educations and the skills that are behind them, because I took all of those master's degrees because I was in a job that sort of required them. That set of skills, I think, is perfectly situated for this job that I'm taking.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Wanda, I'd like to ask all the guests about their views on balance.
Yeah.
How do you view balance in your life?
I feel like I was forced to take balance because I have children. I have 2 children, and I'm still married, right? So I think that is important, that you are able to construct a lifestyle at home that keeps a congruent family life going, right? You still have to do the birthday parties and vacations and all those kind of things. But
This
I
is
will
not a
tell
small
you,
achievement.
it isn't. And I was a little tilted on the work side. I'll admit that. But I had a great spouse who really supported my endeavors to rise up in the world. And he really supported me in, taking care of the children. And he's the cook in the family. And having that kind of balance really helped me, be better at balancing things, because I could see the hard work that he was doing to support me in my work. And I wanted to make sure I did that for him. And so, but
All
it's
right.
difficult. It is.
Thanks so much for being with us today.
You're welcome.